right, let's go. Out here today at CPAC 2020. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you're out here?
Well, I'm out here representing Turning Point USA, which is, as everybody knows, an organization that's all about free speech for conservative students on college campuses, and also promoting my book, Always a Soldier, Service, Sacrifice, and Coming Out as America's Favorite Black Gay Republican, available for pre-order on Amazon now, hits the streets at the end of May.
I wanted to ask you, what would be your best pitch to somebody as to why they should vote for Trump in 2020?
My best pitch is always results. So it's not about how somebody makes you feel. It's not about all. You have to look at the results. You have to look at historic low black unemployment. You have to look at what I always say, the First Step Act, the most comprehensive criminal justice reform in a generation. But you have to look at the economy, which is going really well. Obviously, we're in a lower market right now because of coronavirus fears. But my best pitch is that, look, they are pushing for socialism on the left right now. And this election, no matter who gets the nomination, is going to be about socialism versus capitalism. So if you want America to become a socialist country, vote for the left. If you want us to continue to be free market capitalist society, then vote for Donald Trump.
So again, I wanted to follow up on that and ask about coronavirus, because we are seeing some economic downturn.
Yeah.
Some people also say that the First Step Act goes too far. Are you concerned about the First Step Act going a little bit too far and letting criminals out a little bit too early, or about the economy turning a little bit for the worse and possibly leading to the election of Democrats?
I mean, I think that what's going on with the economy right now is obviously due to coronavirus fears. I think that there'll be a correction once everybody stops. I wish that everybody would stop freaking out. In terms of the First Step Act, I do not think that it goes too far. I was on Capitol Hill lobbying a lot of senators, particularly Senator Cruz, before we got him to flip. And there were concessions made to the First Step Act that got a majority of people on board with it, including many Democrats, but including some Republican senators, because we couldn't have done it without the Republican senators. So no, I don't have any concerns that the First Step Act goes
One
too
last
far.
question for you.
Yes.
I know Turning Point USA constantly rails against identity politics, but your slogan is kind of like the gay black conservative, America's favorite gay black conservative.
Yeah.
So aren't you dipping your foot in the identity politics pool a little bit in doing that?
Well, the thing about it is, and I've answered this question so many times in so many ways on all of my social media platforms, I think that I use identity politics so that I can tell people that are in the identities that I'm in that they don't have to be Democrats just because they're black or just because they're gay or just because they're whatever. I don't know. The left uses these identity politics to say, if you're black, if you're gay, if you're a woman, you have to be a Democrat, you have to be a leftist. I'm using it, and I do use it, and I say, I am all of these things, and I'm not a Democrat, and you don't have to be either.
Do you ever feel tokenized, though, because a majority of black people don't vote Republicans and many gay people don't support Republicans as well? Like, statistics show that.
Absolutely not, because I'm always in control of my own narrative, and I never say things that I don't believe, so I would never feel tokenized. Do black people on the left feel tokenized by Democrats just because there are more of them over there? So they should, you know what I mean?
Sure. It just feels like sometimes we like to parade around black people and say, hey, a lot of these people are Republicans, but statistics show they tend to vote Democrat overwhelmingly.
Last question, and that takes the agency away from me.
Absolutely.
So I'm not being paraded around. I am making the decision to say this is who I am. Mm-hmm. So when you have a white person that says, I support the president or whatever, they're not being paraded around. They have the agency because they're saying what they believe. And so we need to get out of the habit of saying, oh, just because there's somebody that's different, that person is being tokenized and that person is being paraded around. Because I have my own agency. I make my own decisions. Absolutely. And this is what I'm choosing to do. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. So we're out here today at CPAC 2020. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you're out here and what it means for you?
So I'm actually with a group from Gettysburg College, and we just wanted to learn more about, conservative policy and just kind of hang out. Yeah.
Do you guys identify as conservatives now, or are you guys like testing the waters? What's the deal?
We're our college's College Republicans group, so pretty much conservative or moderate Republican, that area.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I wanted to ask you a question about something that affects you, a college student. The Democrats are out here saying that they're going to abolish all student loan debt, and that's something that would benefit a lot of people like you. So why would you vote for somebody like in the Republicans who aren't offering you something like that?
Well, I think the Democrats misunderstand how the economy works on that matter, and they tend to overlook the free market in that sense.
Yeah. But what do you mean? You don't think college students are more interested in having their six-figure debt kind of relieved than, taxing millionaires and billionaires? So.
Well, no, I'd love to have my debt relieved, but I don't think it's realistic.
You don't think it's real? We could make I think they're saying like we could do a tax on Wall Street speculation, or we could raise taxes a bit. I think they said it would be a few trillion. So it's doable. So if it was doable, would you be okay with it?
I think what you end up doing is you end up driving away like important markets from like corporations and stuff when you do that. So yeah.
Another issues that the Democrats are targeting is health care. So a lot of Americans struggle with their medical bills. The Democrats, again, have come up with this bill. Some are trying to do Medicare for all. Some, Pete Buttigieg is trying to do Medicare for some, or Medicare for the people who want it. But the Republicans haven't done much to address this. So are you satisfied with what the Republicans are doing? It seems like the Democrats have a plan, but the Republicans don't.
I tend to agree. I've looked into Buttigieg's a little bit, and I like his only because it allows single payers who prefer their health insurance to stay on it rather than just blanket taking everyone off.
Yeah. So, I mean, are they coming up, are the Republicans coming up with solutions? Is conservatism coming up with solutions here?
I think for healthcare we could be doing better. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Like another issue I wanted to mention was we have the opioid crisis going on in the country right now. I know some Democrats, some liberals, some progressives want to decriminalize or make certain areas where they're allowed to shoot up, where they're given needles, and that could help reduce rates or help sew people off. But Republicans just seem to want to criminalize this more, and that may exacerbate the issue. The war on drugs has been largely a failure. What do you think about that policy proposal?
I actually don't agree with the war on drugs. That's actually an issue I tend to not agree with conservatives on. I remember there was a program, I always get it confused if it was Sweden or Switzerland in the 80s, where they had a very severe drug crisis and they had like health centers where people could go and shoot up, and they had, I believe it was a third of the group that went back into the workforce. Yeah. So I think that's very effective.
If Democrats are supporting policy proposals like that and Republicans aren't, I mean, what makes you a conservative here?
Typically the economy, genuinely. I find myself leaning more towards conservatism on economic issues and social policy more liberal. Yeah.
I think it was one of Bill Clinton's advisors that said it's the economy, stupid. So, I mean, I guess if the economy stays well, are you predicting a win for Trump in 2020?
Yeah, I predict a win for him, yeah.
Bernie Sanders seems like he's going to be the nominee right now, deserving of the nominee. He obviously won it in these fair elections.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Does it make you nervous that somebody who calls himself a democratic socialist will be running against Trump now?
Not really. I think there's a certain stigma to that isn't necessarily fair. I mean, I obviously don't agree with Bernie Sanders on a lot, but I think when you look at it, I think he'll be the right candidate to stack against Trump. Yeah.
Absolutely. Last question. I have this book that they were handing out here. It's Donald Trump Jr.'s Triggered.
Okay.
It's titled Triggered. What do you think about the title? Do you think that's a nice original title for Don Jr.'s book here?
I wouldn't say original. I think it captures the message of the book, though. Yeah.
And what is that message?
Well, I haven't really looked into the book, but from the title, it sounds like he's talking about triggered liberals, I guess.
All right, quick conclusion. Anything else you want to mention?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you're out here, what it means for you to be out here?
Absolutely. So CPAC is just really eventful for me, especially with Turning Point USA, because it really represents a youth movement in the Conservative Party. And so it means a lot to just have the youth out here to represent not only this generation of the party, but also the next.
What do you think are the biggest issues that the youth should be focused on, politically speaking?
In terms of politics and platform, I really think that we need to be focused on not only reforms in terms of abortion, but just overall bipartisanship. I always like to say it takes 2 wings to fly an airplane. And so just being able to come here and really talk about platform and those issues, but also talk about the future and how we can work together to really work together as a country, not as a party.
Do you think we should abolish abortion rights in this country? Like abortion should be illegal?
Yeah. So personal opinion, I do. I do believe that in terms of abortion, it really has a negative effect. I think in 20 or 30 years, this generation will really look back on that as almost like a Holocaust situation. You know, the fact that 1 in 3 people in the United States don't even make it to birth in terms of abortion. It just really impacts me, and it really impacts those around me.
Do you think there's actually a genocide going on right now with abortion clinics and what's happening at Planned Parenthood?
Again, personally, I do. I mean, since its interaction in the 1970s, you see that over 100 million people had not even had a chance to really go. In the United States, we believe in fair trial by jury, trial by your peers. Abortion is not that. There is no trial, there is no judge, there is no jury. And so I really think that's a pressing issue, at least in my eyes, in today's generation, and I hope that this platform can change that.
So if abortion was made illegal, this is one of the tough parts about abortion, what should the penalty for having an abortion be?
Absolutely, and once again, no system's going to be perfect, and so I don't want to go out and claim I know every answer.
Sure. But it's like, what are we going to arrest the mother or going to arrest the doctor?
Exactly. So there's so many different issues. I do think, though, at its core, abortion needs to have some sort of reform, so the women feel not only in charge of themselves, but also the fact that they do have options and choices without trying to take away those rights, but at the same time making sure that that unborn child has those rights as well.
Aren't you worried this may disproportionately affect the poor and disenfranchised, because rich people would be able to go to other countries and still have their abortions, unless we also make that illegal and then just come back and have them here? But so wouldn't this disproportionately affect poor people?
Absolutely. No, I get what you're saying. So let's look at, for example, the drug trade, right? So in the United States, heroin, for example, that's illegal, right? But people still have access to it, right? And you could argue that heroin, doing it illegally, is much more likely to cause injury or death. I would argue making it legal, however, causes much more catastrophic death, and it gives you a sense that it's okay, that you have a green light. But in terms of morale and overall morality, I really do feel like making it illegal will decrease the amount of abortions that we have, and therefore we can go after those who maybe try to go to other countries, and that's where we have bipartisan issues that we must talk about.
Are you a life at conception guy? Life starts at conception?
I do believe that life starts at conception. You know, I go to Liberty University. We have those strong beliefs in the Bible and that God creates everyone individually.
You are part of the Lone Conservative group back here. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you're at CPAC and what is Lone Conservative?
So Lone Conservative is a publication run by college students. So we take young writers, teach them how to write an op-ed, how to pitch, how to get involved in the conservative media, and just how to be more connected in the movement overall.
Absolutely. So I know Democrats are trying to address a lot of issues that Americans are suffering from nowadays, i.e. the opioid crisis, i.e. healthcare, i.e. student loan debt. What would you say to a young person who's concerned about those issues, but the Republicans aren't really speaking up much about or on?
You should join Lone Conservative and write articles for us and make people listen.
Yeah. Well, like, what do you think are Republicans doing anything to battle, do you think, like, the opioid crisis?
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I don't know anything specifically about policies, but I know a lot of conservatives are like, okay, we should get a handle on the pharmaceutical industry. We should figure out, like, the root cause of this. Like, is it doctors over-prescribing? Is it that we have too many, like, illegal drugs coming into the country from the southern border? Yeah. Like, what's the problem?
I know one of the ideas that have been worked on in other countries was having clinics where people have free needles, and then there's kind of therapists and stuff upstairs. Would you think that's a good thing for the government to maybe supply needles for people who use these drugs safely, if it could mean that we could reduce the opioid epidemic in the United States? I
don't really have an opinion on that, but I do know that there are organizations in the United States that do that. I know that there's like a group of nuns in New York who's been doing that for years. Like, a lot of people think that that's a solution. I mean, we have Starbucks, that was like a big issue a couple years ago. They had safe needle deposits in their bathrooms. That's a path to address the issue. I don't really know if it's an effective one.
I had one last topic I wanted to talk to you about, because you guys are a student organization, student-based organization. Another thing that Democrats are talking a lot about is free college. And students have a ton of debt, you know, $50K to $100K. I'm sure many of your people in your group have a lot of student loan debt. The Democrats are saying free college. What are the Republicans doing? Why should somebody who's college age and suffering from a lot of student loan debt vote for a Republican over a Democrat?
I'm so sorry if you took out a lot of student loan debt, but that's a major decision. I don't think if you don't know how to pay something back, you shouldn't take out a loan in the first place. A lot of people are suffering from debt on their houses, and they're losing their houses. Businesses go bankrupt because you make a bad financial decision. That doesn't mean the government should bail you out. But if you're 18 years old, you shouldn't be able to take out $250,000 in student loans because you're a kid. You don't really know what you're doing. College shouldn't cost that much anyway. The value of education isn't that high. And the government's the one that incentivized colleges and didn't stop them from raising their tuition so high. So, like, the government caused the problem, and like a way to solve this problem isn't necessarily like the government forgiving all the debt that it caused. It should be to find the source of the problem, which is the high cost of college anyway. Making it free isn't going to make a difference.
So the solution to government intervention, you don't think, is more government intervention?
No, it should be put a cap on the things that they did are bad. So put a cap on, so like providing free college would just eventually be a government subsidy. Like, none of my aunts and uncles went to college and they're fine. So do they get a check for $100,000 because everybody else, like, their age has debt? Like, that doesn't seem fair.
Absolutely. One last topic for you. Donald Trump's obviously our president. He's running again in 2020. Many people in the left-wing media say that he is a sexist, he's a racist, he's a homophobe. So you as a woman, do you think he's a sexist, although he has said maybe some coarse things about women in the past?
Yeah, I think Donald Trump doesn't really filter what he says. I think that's a good and bad thing. I don't care for some of the language that he's used. However, he's put so many women in power positions in his administration. Out of all of his children, Ivanka is obviously the one the most involved, and she's a woman. So I don't have any issue with the administrative decisions that he's made, and I think administratively, like.
Sure. But he's also supposed to be a role model and a leader, right? So if he's saying grab him by the pee, in private, and that tape goes out, that's our president, right? Talking about sexual assault. So that's not turning off, you think, female voters from still voting for him? Or not you as far as that goes, so that doesn't bother you enough to stop you from voting for him?
I don't care for it, but I still voted for him.
Yeah. What about the tweets? Are the tweets too much? Are you satisfied with how he's tweeting? Do you think that's a little bit obnoxious, or?
I think it's fine.
All the tweets you think are fine, like 5 in the morning saying random things. I think he tweeted out about Roger Stone might be influencing, how that case is settled before it's settled. Isn't that dangerous for a president to do?
I think it's fine. I don't really have a problem with the way he tweets. I think it makes him seem more human, more regular, more transparent. I think it makes him as a president seem more accessible to the American people, that he just directly communicates with them and doesn't have to go through the media.
Definitely a nice workaround for that.
So I like that.
So we're out here today at CPAC 2020. You are Jared Holt. You work for Right Wing Watch. Can you tell me a little bit more about your work and what your experience at CPAC so far has been?
So I've been covering CPAC for a number of years now. I work for an organization. What we do is track right-wing movements in the United States. I have sort of a focus on both extremism and also kind of how that interacts with the digital space. So I'm out here looking for both any known members of kind of extremist movements that I've seen, and also just trying to get a feel. This year I'm really focused on what conservatives are saying about tech platforms and tech censorship. So yeah.
I know, I listened to a couple of the events too, a little bit about tech censorships. Conservatives say they are shadow banned and censored, and do you disagree? Do you not think that's happening online, or?
I think, a lot of what we hear in support of that is anecdotal. It's, this person had an issue, Facebook says maybe it's human error.
I know YouTube's been messing with their algorithms a lot. I don't know if it's specifically targeting conservatives, but we've been seeing some of that tech censorship. Are you concerned about any of the stuff that we see going on in YouTube?
I'm not as familiar with that. I know that algorithms are hurting a lot of people. They're really trying to, from what I'm gaining, put some of the more corporate brands forward, like NBC and that sort of thing. And a lot of independent creators are being hurt by that. But I haven't seen any evidence that it's on an ideological basis. And that's really sort of what the claim is that's being put forward, but they haven't seemed to be able to substantiate it with any sort of metrics and that sort of thing.
So we've only been here for about a day and a half, maybe 2 days. The conference has a couple more days, but I wanted to ask you, have you found a lot of extremism or any extremism here at CPAC?
I found a few people every year. This is a big conservative event, if not like the biggest one. So you get all kinds of different parts of the conservative movement come here and try to get their sliver of the spotlight, get their little bit of press attention. I have seen some extremist groups, but they're not particularly prominent. Security was increased this year. I don't know if that deterred them from trying to get in.
So do you think there's a large percentage of either extreme or white nationalists or white supremacists here being involved or being preached here?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's the mainstream. I think it's a fringe that very desperately tries to seek attention and tries to disrupt and kind of force their agenda into the conversation. But I don't have the impression that most people here really think that way or really support that movement.
Absolutely. Because it feels like a lot of people talk about Trump supporters. I know where this is a conservative conference, but people talk about Trump supporters like that. So that's why I asked that question. I also wanted to ask, so we're seeing the rise of political violence here in the United States. Do you condemn political violence over at Right Wing Watch?
Yeah, absolutely. Political violence is just not acceptable. It's not how, civilized adults should be.
On both sides.
Should be, yeah. Yeah,
I wanted to give you a specific event now, though. Andy Ngo was attacked by Antifa in Portland while covering the event. Would you condemn the political violence against Andy Ngo?
I think what happened to Andy was terrible.
Yeah. And you condemn that violence?
I don't think that was appropriate. I don't think that should have been done.
Absolutely. Yeah. Nice. I also know many people talk about Right Wing Watch covering the more extreme elements of the party. Can you tell me who you think the extreme members are? Name them, because we don't want to hide in the shadows. Who are the people who are leading the wrong parts of the conservative movement, or the more extreme or white nationalist elements?
So what I've been sort of watching, there's kind of the early stages of alt-right 2.0 coalition type thing happening with the younger section of the white nationalist movement. We saw the established part of it, the Richard Spencers, the Matt Heimbachs of the world, have really fallen out of grace. They're in the middle of lawsuits, their public reputations are destroyed, and they have no political traction really, and not really much of a following either.
Yeah. Do you guys work to deplatform those people? Is the goal to deplatform these people?
The goal is not to deplatform. Sometimes deplatforming happens when we're looking for answers. We don't, ask companies to deplatform. If something is going against a policy, sometimes I will send an email and say, hey, you say the policy is this is happening. Like, I'm trying to figure out where the lines are. And that's just kind of a broader issue with like moderation online in general. It's just not very consistent, and it's not very transparent. So
I wanted to ask you another question. I know you're from Right Wing Watch, but some people are also concerned about extremism on the left. So do you think there are any figures on the left that we should also be concerned with? Are there any extremists working with any maybe of the presidential candidates who are running now among the Democrats? Is there any concern from the left as well?
To be honest, I spend most of my time, it's my job to watch the right wing, and I'm really not super familiar with like all the nuances of what's happening on the left.
Sure. But like mainstream figures, i.e. Bernie Sanders right now, has brought on Linda Sarsour as a surrogate. This is somebody who people on the right and left both call anti-Semitic and both call extreme. Do you think that's a concern that there's some extremists both on the left wing as well? In the left wing as well?
I mean, sure, I guess it could be a concern, but I don't know enough about the background.
I mean, Linda Sarsour uses language talking about Jews that compares Zionism to Nazism. I know she's called Zionist Jewish supremacist. She uses the same language as David Duke, who I'm sure you're familiar with.
Right.
So if this person uses the same language as David Duke, do you think there's any cause of concern from left-wing figures as well?
Well, sure, that should be a concern. That kind of rhetoric is, not appropriate. And I would hope that, I'm trusting you that you're giving me the facts, right?
And I hope you do your research too, but you
yeah.
aren't familiar with any of this stuff from Linda Sarsour as somebody who's involved in media and keeps up with, I'm assuming, the presidential campaigns. This isn't a fringe figure, Linda Sarsour.
Right, but I don't track people on the left, so that's not where I spend my time researching. But assuming what you're saying is correct, I don't think you have any reason to lie. I definitely.
So only bigots on the right. Only bigots on the right are the people you are concerned with.
Well, it's called Right Wing Watch.
Sure, yeah. But bigotry in general is a horrible thing. You're not concerned mainly about bigotry. You're concerned about bigotry from the right.
We have a focus on our publication. We have a niche that we do. Mm-hmm. That's not to say that like bigotry is not a broader societal problem, but sure. What we're focused on is a sliver.
Absolutely.
So,
last question I had. Some people in this conference say things of you that aren't exactly, you're a little bit infamous here. Some people call you a smear, somebody who smears people, almost like a barnacle, just looking to tear other people down to kind of get some success for yourself. How would you respond to criticisms of yourself like that?
I think my work speaks for itself. A lot of these people have not talked to me. They don't know my work. They just know what, maybe people I'm critical of have to say in response to whatever criticism my work has levied. I think my work is fair and it's as accurate as I can make it. At the time, I try to do my due diligence and be ethical as a reporter. But, you're not always going to have fans.
Sure, everybody has enemies. Were people openly hostile to you inside CPAC? Was anybody openly hostile?
Yeah, I've had some people be hostile, but...
What was your experience?
People calling me slurs, homophobic slurs, and just name calling. But that comes with the work, right?
Absolutely.
It's like what I report on is pretty intense stuff. So if you're gonna, how do I say it? Like if you jump in the pool, can't always be surprised if you get wet.
Well, I brought up one of the criticisms too. It's that like you were only focused on bigotry from the right, but I guess Right Wing Watch, you guys. I don't know. People should be concerned about bigotry across the board, right?
Right.
So, but I understand that you guys are mainly right Wing Watch. I wanted to thank you for your time and wanted to give you your opportunity. Is there anything else in conclusion that you wanted to mention?
No. You can check out our work at rightwingwatch.org. Check us out on Twitter, and that's all I got.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. The infamous Jared Halt. In the country, many states are making marijuana legal. Do you think marijuana should be made legal?
In terms of marijuana, personally, I don't participate in marijuana, but I can understand that that drug is not like other drugs, that it's not really a gateway drug that leads to things such as heroin. Personally, I don't have an issue with it, but if it were up to me to vote, I would most likely vote no.
Why?
Just in terms of just mind-altering drugs, I've never been a fan of something that takes you out of your right mind.
Would you vote for alcohol to be made illegal, so you support prohibition of alcohol? Because alcohol does the same things.
Of course. Now, I support alcohol and a good variety of consumption, but even a small amount of weed can alter someone's mind versus 1 or 2 beers versus drinking irresponsibly.
But are you being consistent now? Because alcohol does even worse things. Alcohol in many cases are even worse than marijuana.
Yeah.
And prohibition wasn't effective. It seems like the war on drugs isn't effective. So it feels like we have a double standard for alcohol here.
Yes,
so why?
Absolutely. I completely understand what you're saying. So in terms of alcohol versus marijuana, I just do believe that in general, marijuana has more of an effect on life, talking about like that gateway drug, in my personal opinion, but also I don't deal with alcohol or marijuana either. But personally, if someone tells me that they smoke marijuana or participate, I don't have an issue with that. I think that's fine, and as long as it's in a controlled environment, that it doesn't affect others around you. And I believe the same way with alcohol. If alcohol, as long as it doesn't affect those around you, then I believe it should be all right.
Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Yeah. So we're out here today in Maryland for CPAC 2020. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you guys are out here? What should be out here?
We're covering it for the Daily Caller. We're the social media guys. So yeah, we're just covering it. We're here, supporting the ideas behind why we're here today, supporting the conservative movement and the Republican Party around the country.
Great to see everyone come out. Beautiful, beautiful hotel, beautiful venue. It's been a great experience so far. But we're just trying to find a little bit more. Hopefully, maybe we'll be able to sneak Trump a question.
Yeah. So we're all young people. I wanted to ask you guys about an issue that affects young people, and that's student loan debt. So Democrats have a lot of solutions for this. They're trying to generally abolish student loan debt, and the Republicans don't seem to really have a good plan versus against that. So why should young people like us who may have student loan debt vote for a Republican over Democrat?
I think one of the ways that the conservative movement has really failed is by outsourcing the issue of student loan debt and higher education in general to the left. And I think, the whole classic line of, oh, you took out a loan, you paid it back. A lot of these young people have been defrauded by, the fact that the government gives them basically what amounts to subprime loans to go to college and get a wage that is less than the actual loan that they took out. So I think the Republican Party needs to talk more about student loan debt. I think taxing university endowments to pay for it is a policy.
So you think the Republicans are handling this better than Democrats are handling this better than Republicans?
Well, no, I think their plans are bad. I think using taxpayer money to eliminate student loan debt, I don't think that's a very good idea, and it's not really fair to people who are.
But when the alternative is Republicans to say socialism is bad, you're not really winning very many voters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a convincing argument to people with a lot of student loan debt that, hey, we're going to raise the taxes on the millionaires and billionaires. It's going to hurt the economy. I don't think students really care about that. Another issue I wanted to talk to you guys about that's affecting Americans right now is healthcare costs. And again, healthcare costs for many Americans are through the roof. It's bankrupting many Americans. The Democrats have a solution for this, and it's Medicare for all, which most of them are saying, or Medicare for some, which is like Pete Buttigieg is saying. The Republicans don't have a good plan for this. So if you're struggling with healthcare issues, why should you vote for a Republican over a Democrat?
I think that is also a place where Republicans have failed. We ran in 2016 on repealing and replacing Obamacare. They couldn't even get it repealed. Republicans really need to start practicing what they're preaching when it comes to health care. Otherwise, you're just going to keep seeing those votes lost to the left.
It's another way. It's just similar to student loan debt, where the right has basically let the left set the terms of the narrative, which is that the left wants to give you health care and the right wants to take it away. And I think, people still talk about repeal Obamacare. That's at this point a broken campaign promise. They have to talk about expanding choice, bringing down the cost of prescription drugs, being able to sell across state lines, things that talk about actual concrete proposals that will lower the cost of healthcare for Americans, which is skyrocketing right now. People are really struggling with it.
I want to ask you guys one last topic. The Trump campaign and the Trump presidency, one of their accomplishments that they commonly took is this criminal justice reform bill that they passed, and they've been letting a lot of criminals out of jail because of this. Is that a conservative value now to do all this criminal justice reform and let out criminals prematurely?
I don't really agree with well, it depends what you mean by criminal justice reform.
Criminal justice reform that Trump and the Senate passed.
Well, yeah, I don't think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that there are millions of people who are locked up, who have been locked up in jail, majority of people, I think not enough to warrant a complete overhaul of the criminal justice system. I think the war on drugs that's something we can talk about. I think that's failed pretty much entirely. But I think
why you're a Republican? It sounds like everything we talked about doesn't. Why you're a Republican now? For all of these things, all these key issues that are facing Americans, and the Democrats are doing it better than the Republicans.
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of split in the movement right now between sort of the libertarian side, sort of the new right side, sort of the traditional Reaganite conservative side, and I think all those factions certainly have a home in the conservative movement. And I think,
but there are new
ideas. There are new ideas that I think, people are getting sick and tired of kind of the old Republican Party guard. I think there's a new Republican Party that's coming in, one that is kind of ditching the libertarian streak of the past, and ditching sort of the compassionate conservatism of the Bush administration.
Ditching the free market consensus.
Yeah, challenging the free market. Yeah.
Last question I had for you guys is that I have this Donald Trump book, self-titled Triggered. What message do you think Donald Trump Jr. is trying to send by having his book titled Triggered?
Hey, if he wants to make liberals upset with it, I'm fine with it.
Is that what the message is?
I guess, but that's a fine message because they're going to hate him regardless.
That's a good message.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's fine.
I think a guy like Trump Jr. kind of takes more hate from the left than really most people out there.
Chelsea Clinton, to be fair, gets her fair share of hate, so I don't know if he gets anything any worse than her.
No, that's true. I'm saying the guy who wants to, really make a headline based on, all of the attacks he gets from the left. Obviously, that's certainly how you do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Quickly, inclusion. Anything else you guys want to mention?
No, we're good.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much for your time. Thank you, guys. Hope the questions weren't too tough. Just had to hit you where it hurts. Make a solution for the student loan and the health care. And I didn't want to bring it up, but the opioid crisis. Small governments aren't going to solve the opioid crisis. So,
I mean,
I'm a conservative. I'm a Republican, but what the fuck are they doing? And the criminal justice reform is stupid.
That's how
I thought it was the wall, but
it was a lot of things.